Hello, everybody. It's great to see you. I hope you're doing well this morning and this evening. And we're super happy to see you. And yay, we are finishing our tour of Kosala tonight. How exciting is that? How many people do you know that have read the entire Kosala Samyutta? Not just read it, but have studied it in great depth. Maybe not too many people. So you are of the select few, and we feel like we're in good company with you. So, Stephen, you want to start us off tonight?
Yes. Well, I have to say that I have to admit that my collection or our collection, this collection of the Kosala Samyutta readings does not include the entire full every single number. And so I would then exhort everyone to fill in the gaps, the ones that we skipped over. I tried to pick the most super exciting ones, the salient points, but there are others for the completists of us to read, but we are very happy to cover it mostly. And we have even a special postscript, if we can have time, to look at from outside of this about that personal, special personal relationship between the Buddha and King Pasenadi, which is a beautiful thing. And so we have this somewhat strange archery sutta to read. I find it interesting and sometimes perplexing, and I hope we can talk about it a little bit. But we do have also a special ancient poem by a woman named Sappho, the great Greek woman poet, who I think Regina would like to read.
I would, indeed. So,
I almost said poetess, and I'm so glad I didn't,
I'm so
because
glad you
that is
didn't.
no longer acceptable.
It's not okay. Can you explain while I'm pulling it up why it's not okay, Stephen?
Why is poetess not acceptable?
Yeah.
I guess because it sort of says that poets are men, and they're this special group of poets who are not men, but they don't get the full name poet, and so they have this sort of feminine suffix. But it's sort of like the word actress, and I know that some women who act don't like that name either. They prefer actor.
Well, it's a bit
But
of a diminutive, right? It's a diminution, as it were.
maybe.
Okay, maybe. Um, so here we are, a Sappho fragment. And if you don't remember why we call it a fragment, you can go to the Bhikkhuni section of our website and you'll see the fragments and the explanation. So here's the poem. I want to say something, but shame prevents me. Yet if you had a desire for good or beautiful things, and your tongue were not concocting some evil to say, shame would not hold down your eyes, but rather you would speak about what is just.
Is there any more? No, that's
No,
it.
I mean, that's kind of powerful, don't you think? Ending it right there. You would speak about what is just. Unless Stephen, you didn't share the whole poem with me, in which point we can say we took poetic license.
Well, it's a fragment.
It's a fragment. All right, so we'll move on from our fragment to our text of the day or the evening.
Yes,
And do you want to?
archery.
Yes. You know, archery is a metaphor or a simile that the Buddha uses often. So remembering the with the Buddha's teachings, he uses these everyday um, descriptions that were known very well to these people. And of course, this was before guns. I even hate to say the word. It was before that. And so archery was both a skill and a means of, well, I guess, shall we say, getting food or harming people. Anyway, it's another one of those similes that we see often. And I'm going to share it with you right now.
Yes, and so we'd like people to join us in reading it. And if you would like to read it, please go ahead and read. Raise your blue hand, and then would love to ask you to read and participate.
And in case you're wondering why this is taking a while, I'm having my computer's doing some strange things. So give me just a second, if you will. Okay. I promised Stephen that I will upgrade my computer to another one that I have. Now y'all should be able to see it. Are you?
Yes,
Beautiful.
it's a little
So great.
small, but we can see it. Yep.
Now is it
Yes,
bigger?
but we have no blue hands yet.
Maybe I know that Brahman Levy does okay, we have a lot of blue hands. Beautiful. Blah blah blah. So let us start with Brahman, and he'll start us at Savati.
Thank you for the opportunity. I always feel uncomfortable when no one raises their hand and want to give other people a chance. But when I don't see any, I'm going to raise my hand. So thank you. Archery. At Savati, sitting to one side, King Pasenadi of Kosala said to the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, where should a gift be given?" "Wherever one's mind has confidence, great King." "But Venerable Sir, where does what is given become of great fruit?" This is one question, great King. Where should a gift be given? And this another, where does what is given become of great fruit? What is given to one who is virtuous, great King, is of great fruit. Not so what is given to an immoral person. Now then, great King, I will question you about the same point. Answer as you see fit. What do you think, great King? Suppose you are at war and a battle is about to take place. Then a Katya youth would arrive, one who is untrained, unskilled, unpracticed, inexperienced, timid, petrified, frightened, quick to flee. Would you employ that man, and would you have any use for such a man? Surely not, Venerable Sir. Then a Brahmin youth would arrive, a Vesa youth, a Sutta youth, who is untrained, quick to flee. Would you employ that man, and would you have any use for such a man? Surely not, Venerable Sir.
Thank you.
What do you think? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you so much, Brahman.
Sure.
Very much appreciative. I think that we will, we have several other hands. And so then we will go, I believe Abaya was next. And we'll start right here, Abaya.
What do you think, great King? Suppose you are at war and battle is about to take place. Then a Kataya youth would arrive, one who is trained, skillful, practiced, and experienced, brave, courageous, bold, ready to stand his place. Would you employ that man? And would you have any use for such a man? Oh, surely I would, Venerable Sir. Then a Brahmin youth would arrive, a Vasa youth, a Sutta youth, who is trained, ready to stand his place. Would you employ that man, and would you have any use for such a man? Surely I would, Venerable Sir.
Thank you. Diane.
So too, great King, when a person has gone forth from the household life into homelessness, no matter from what clan, if he has abandoned 5 factors and possesses 5 factors, then what is given to him is of great fruit. What 5 factors have been abandoned? Sensual desire has been abandoned. Ill will has been abandoned. Sloth and torpor have been abandoned. Restlessness and remorse have been abandoned. Doubt has been abandoned. What 5 factors does he possess? He possesses the aggregate of virtue of one beyond training, the aggregate of concentration of one beyond training, the aggregate of wisdom of one beyond training, the aggregate of liberation of one beyond training, the aggregate of the knowledge and vision of liberation of one beyond training. He possesses these 5 factors. Thus, what is given to one who has abandoned 5 factors and one who possesses 5 factors is of great fruit.
Thank you, Diane. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we are now calling on Jean. Starting right here at the first stanza, Jean. And you'd have to unmute yourself, Jean.
Fourth,
And we're starting right here.
as a king intent on waging war, would you employ a youth skilled with the bow, one endowed with strength and vigor, but not the coward on account of his birth? So even though he be of low birth, one should honor the person of noble conduct, the sagely man in whom are established the virtues of patience and gentleness. One should build delightful hermitages and invite the learned to dwell in them. One should build water tanks in the forest and causeways over rough terrain. With a confident heart, one should give to those of upright character, give food and drink and things to eat, clothing to wear, and beds and seats. For as the rain cloud thundering, wreathed in lightning with 100 crests, pours down its rain upon the earth, flooding both the plain and valley, so the wise man, faithful, learned, having had a meal prepared, satisfies with food and drink the mendicants who live on alms. Rejoicing, he distributes gifts and proclaims, give, give. For that is his thundering, like the sky when it rains. That shower of merit so vast will pour down on the giver.
Thank you so much. And I just so love that those last few stanzas are really quite beautiful. I'm wondering what your thoughts are as well. So we'll begin our discussion. And Stephen, there were some things that you had wanted to share regarding the sutta. So I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think there may be first just a couple of technical things that we should just clarify. First of all, we see a presentation of the 4 classic castes, the varnas. Sometimes it literally means color, but the 4 classic castes of India until this day, in their sort of Pali language, untranslated Pali language terms, words. So Khattiya would be the warrior class, Kshatriya, and that would be the class or caste that the Buddha himself is said to have come from. The caste that's sort of in a sense above that caste would be the Brahmin caste, the priestly caste, and then the following 2 above, so the Brahmins are sort of on the apex, and then come the warrior caste, and I think since they're the warrior caste, it's why they are presented first, because a warrior might be most suitable for archery. And then we have the Vesa and the Sudha. Those are again Pali terms for the merchant class and then the lower class. There is a group of people, a large group of people outside of this class, which are today called the Dalits, the broken people, in fact, the untouchables, who are not even mentioned. They don't even make it into the sutta. And so the Buddha uses these 4 caste levels to talk about ability, but he seems to say, I think, that it doesn't really matter from which caste they come. What's more important is their ability to be a good archer or a good fighter, a good soldier. And then he kind of moves on to this. I think he's going to move on to a point which I find, I have to admit, slightly puzzling. Or maybe it's not that I find it puzzling, but I find it hard to accept, just to be completely honest about myself. But what he talks about, this is where we have the section, when a person has gone forth from the household life into homelessness, from no matter from what clan. I think that's important. So he's sort of negating the sort of lineage of the person. And he talks about here 2 sets of 5 factors. Now, the first set of 5 factors are very well known to most of us. They are typically known in English as the 5 hindrances, and they are enumerated here for us. Sometimes the third one, which is here rendered as sloth and torpor, is also represented by dullness and drowsiness. That might be a better capturing of this quality, this negative quality. But it said that these 5 hindrances are the hindrances to good concentration, and probably we can say hindrances to any sort of, say, spiritual breakthrough. So if anyone wishes to sort of break through to the Dhamma, these 5 need to be abandoned, set aside. And they might be able to only be set aside temporarily. They don't have to be necessarily fully eradicated, but they have to, in a sense, be put into storage. They have to be not currently present for the meditator. And it said when that occurs, there's a meditative state called jhana. It's kind of a very absorptive, very blissful state. Now, there's a mention of a second set of 5 factors, which is called here the virtues of one beyond training, which was very weird for me because I couldn't think of ever finding this set ever before. And in fact, I conducted a search myself in Pali, which is not so hard to do in our modern era, of the entire Pali canon, and found out that in the Sutta Pitaka, as far as I could see, there only are 2 other mentions of this set of 5, and in fact, only one, I believe, of the full set. And they're both, perhaps unsurprisingly, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, because that's a good place to enumerate groups or lists of things. And so there's this second special group of 5, and it has this special term of one beyond training, which I think would be impossible to understand, especially by its English rendering. But it's a rather technical term. And what it means is that it seems to me that in the Buddhist world of sort of practice, people or beings are divided into 3 broad categories. The biggest category would be what is called literally in Pali the uninstructed worldling, or patujana, which literally means one of the masses, one of the multitude. And that would be somebody who has perhaps practiced Buddhism, actually, not somebody necessarily who has never even heard about Buddhism, but unfortunately for that person, they haven't yet made the breakthrough to the Dhamma, to enter the stream and become a stream enterer.
Stephen,
And so we have this sort of, yes.
Are you calling us Patujana?
Well, I'm not calling you necessarily a patujana, but maybe it takes one to know one, Regina.
Maybe so.
You're like so patujana, be honest. You're like a run-of-the-mill person like me.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because putu means like many, and jana is a person. So patujana. But then there's a sort of second set, a much smaller set of people, hopefully, I'd like to think, that it's not a very, very small set. And those are the people who are trainees. They're actually training. So not only are we called masses, people of the masses, the multitude, the unwashed masses, but we're not even considered trainers. We're not even in full training yet, even though we spend all this time reading this stuff and sitting on our cushions. And in the big Buddhist world, according to the Pali Canon, unless that person, that being, has made the breakthrough to the Dhamma and entered the stream, they are not officially a trainee. So the trainees are the stream enterers, the once returners, and the non-returners. And then there's a very small apex of people, beings, who are said to be beyond training, which means they've got it. They no longer need to know anything. They don't rely on the Dhamma. They have seen it personally, directly. It's entirely clear to them. And those people are called the worthy ones, which is an interesting and important maybe term to remember in the context of this discourse, the worthy ones, because these are the arahants. And the word arahant literally means a worthy one. And in fact, there's a pretty striking sutta, I think it's spoken by Mahakassapa in the Samyutta Nikaya, where he talks about how even after making his breakthrough to the Dhamma, he still, when he went on alms round, he did so as a debtor. He was still in debt to the donors because he hadn't fully liberated himself. And only, he says, when he had made full understanding, complete destruction of the taints, had made an ending to becoming and became an arahant, was he then at that point fully worthy of dana, of alms. And so there's this list of 5 of the arahant qualities: wisdom, liberation, knowledge and vision, virtue. I'm sorry, I skipped over a little bit. But these are said to be these special 5 factors. And this whole thing seems to me to kind of raise the big question of how is it that the quality of merit or reward that the donor receives is based upon the quality of the recipient. And this, as we spoke about a little bit in the last session, can create some problems for people who wish to sort of maximize their benefit and give to people who they think will then give them merit through giving. So, I mean, what do you think, Regina, about this whole concept? Does it seem very normal to you? Does it seem kind of strange?
Well, it depends on which concept you're asking about, but I think you're referring to the concept of who we should give to. And that means that we should give to those who have virtue, who have developed concentration, who are very wise, as all of these things that you've said. And I think the part that's problematic is we're also raised to believe that it's good to help others regardless. Well, this could be a cultural thing, as we discussed at the last session. So in our culture here in the United States, and perhaps other countries that have this idea that, and it seems to be a particular to Christianity, of giving to whoever regardless of their personality, but to their need, this would seem somewhat cruel, perhaps. But on the other hand, there's also the idea that you don't want to just give money away willy-nilly, or whatever your shape that your alms take. But at the same time, I know many people who don't give money. I mean, we live in New York City. I know people who don't give money to certain homeless people, but do give to other homeless people. So if there are, for example, homeless people who seem drunk, or they look like they probably abuse drugs, people are less likely to give them money reason being they may spend it unwisely and harmfully. And
Right.
so there's this idea that you should give to institutions that are well managed, where the money will go to people in a beneficial way. And the Buddha is not necessarily saying that. Then there's the issue of, well, if you give it only to people who are worthy, aren't there other forms of worthiness? And do those people just suffer because they're seen as not worthy and they can't give anything back necessarily?
It's a great issue, I would say. I mean, I have to say, as a person raised in the Catholic faith and conditioned, I'm sure, by it, we were sort of trained to think that, in a sense, we're all God's children, or we're all equal under the eyes of God, which means that in some cosmic sense, we're all sort of equalized by this overseeing being, God. And so, in that sense, everyone would be sort of equally worthy of help, of donations, of aid. Yet, I think we all know, if we think about it, even for a short amount of time, we all sort of have to pick and choose, in a sense, to whom we give, because most of us don't have unlimited resources. And so we tend to find out who would be the best choice. And so, but it can result in somewhat awkward situations. Like I think Regina and I were talking about this situation where someone might be wanting to go to a monastery or to see a group of monastics going on an alms round. And so they, they go off on the subway and step over numerous homeless people to get to those monastics to give them food or donations. And is that bad? Well, not necessarily. I don't know exactly. And I think it would be important to mention this sutta, which I made reference to in the last session, which is from the Anguttara Nikaya, number 57, Vacca, Book of Threes, where he does say it's important to the idea is that people should give. And I'll read it briefly because I think it is important to stress this point. He says, those who say, the ascetic Gautama says, alms should be given only to me, or only what is given to my disciples is very fruitful, not what is given to the disciples of others. Do not state what has been said by me, but misrepresent me with what is untrue and contrary to fact. So he's certainly not saying only give money to Buddhist monks. But then he goes on to say, like the next sentence basically, but, Vacca, I say that one acquires merit even if one throws away dishwashing water in a refuse dump or cesspit with the thought, may the living beings here sustain themselves with this. How much more, then, does one acquire merit when one gives to human beings? However, I say that what is given to one of virtuous behavior is more fruitful than what is given to an immoral person. And the most worthy recipient is one who has abandoned 5 factors and possesses 5 factors, which are precisely what we have listed here. And so on the one hand, he talks about the importance of giving and how giving in any sense is very important, and that benefit can be gained through that giving regardless of to whom or to what. Yet, he clearly says that the benefit is somehow proportional to the recipient.
And I think in some ways, though, it's difficult. It's difficult. It can be argued that there is, generally speaking, this does make sense. For example, would you want to give $50 to a college student who needs to buy a textbook, or $50 to someone who's, I don't know, going to spend it on a movie and candy and popcorn?
Right.
You see, so there is something to that.
Absolutely.
So the
I
person
think this
who,
is all sort of almost in a way normal for us to think this way. Somebody is more worthy.
or perhaps rather than saying more worthy, because I mean, the Buddha is saying in 435 that even though someone be of low birth, and he has said this before, that if they have noble conduct, then they truly are the worthy ones.
Yes. And so he's certainly not equating one's station, so to speak, one's caste, or one's even wealth level to one's nobleness, one's worthiness. And he's equating one's worthiness or one's nobility with one's spiritual attainment.
And I do think, one thing that Annie said at our last class, that she and I believe her family donate to the monastery to maintain the Sangha. And it may have been Annie or Anne. I'm not sure if it was An Fang. I'm not sure. But that is also very important. We want to maintain the fourfold Sangha. And a very important aspect of that is giving.
Mm-hmm.
So one has to ask, and I guess, are we comfortable with the idea that we give to those who are worthy, to those who have merit, to those who will use, or it's not just money. I keep saying money. I think that's really kind of telling. Does one give to those who have greater expectations of using that money well? And does that make sense? I think it does, though, Stephen.
Well, perhaps we should hear from Jean.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Jean, your thoughts on this? And you're going to have to unmute yourself, Jean.
I was thinking that there are many so many needs, and we're also interdependent. And when we think about the world today, I mean, I think too, I want to give where I can to people who are working on the path, or or have made achievements, or monks and so forth, monasteries. But we also have a society that we're responsible for, because we're all, many of us are secular, and so we're living in the world with others, and that in a democracy that implies a great deal of responsibility. So there are people at all levels of society who may need help in some way or another. And I don't think one can get rid of that responsibility. And I think that by not being responsible, we have so many more ills in our society and so much more suffering, because we really don't look at what people need and how to help them in a good way, no matter where they are in this life. So I feel this is inadequate to describe what our responsibilities are today. I think it goes part of the way, but not fully.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, I think I have to say, in my opinion, it would be a great mistake for a person who's a Buddhist to go around the world with their, resources, and then to eye people and sort of quickly sum them up as worthy or not worthy, because it seems to me that that would really be a sort of a mind of great judgmentalness, and even maybe anger, to think that, well, there's no way I'm going to give my money to this person. I'm going to save my money for that person. I think that would put one in sort of peril, and it would be a very dangerous type of activity.
Thank you, Stephen. And I do want to just say that in terms of generating merit, the Buddha wasn't necessarily speaking about fairness in society, although he is talking about these little hunter young men by way of example. I mean, he really is speaking about future lives. And the people here in samsara that can be of greatest benefit are those who have the highest spiritual attainment. So there's that as well. But let's hear from An Fong, shall we?
I remember Bhikkhu Bodhi lecture in the Anutta Nikaya about the merit of four type of people who you should give to. It just recently, he just gave that lecture recently. And what I'm taken from that is it doesn't matter what is, it doesn't matter whether you base your judgment on the person who is worthy or not worthy. Because if the virtual person give it to the virtual person, that accumulate a lot of merit, and that's what my understanding. And I think that before we give, we reflect back whether it's benefit for the person, rather than thinking whether the person deserve it, because not I think we should help anyway.
And we certainly see organizations, for example, the Buddhist Tzu Chi organization does tremendous works in terms of helping people all around the world. So whenever there's a huge typhoon, whenever there's famine, Tzu Chi comes in and they don't ask, well, what are your attainments? They give and they help. And I think, that's a really important example. I mean, we do talk about the Red Cross and the Red Crescent and how great they are, but what about Tzu Chi? That's really a worthy organization. So I do want to say that, like, Buddhists do give, Buddhists do help, and we're just looking at this 2,500-year-old teaching within a society that practiced the caste system, and see how it can relate to our lives and how we can live its essence and how that will help us in our practice. Thank you so much for sharing, An Fong. Stephanie.
Is Stephanie with us? She
She
seems to have
was?
left the building.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry. Thank you, Regina, for making that statement, that clarifying statement about that the Buddha really wasn't perhaps here, if I understood you correctly, talking about social responsibility as much as he was talking about rebirth. And that was so helpful, because this is honestly probably the part of the Dhamma that I struggle with the most. And I'm going to say something that is probably really not going to endear anyone to me. But whenever I read this or a sutta similar, I feel like he's like, he knows that there's a finite amount of resources, and he's like, hey, like, my guys need this. And so it's really better to give to my guys, because if they've actually agreed to live in this way, that they don't get anything unless you give to them. So I find my heart a little less open than I usually do. I mean, one of the great benefits of the Dhamma to me is that I feel much more open-hearted. And this is one I struggle with it. But yet what you said was one very helpful, because the aspect of the Dhamma in terms of rebirth is one that probably I leave alone the most, I guess. But the second thing I thought too is just culturally in our time right now, I was thinking about what Stephen said about Catholicism and growing up in that way. And I think about sort of the reckoning we're having right now in our culture, where more and more, I think certainly white people are acknowledging that we have a history built on slavery and genocide, and that maybe, not to use a lightning bolt word, but maybe there is some sort of reparations, and what does that look like? That so when we're thinking in terms of generosity and giving, and so it's just loaded to me, really, and how this 2,500 plus year teaching really can be useful. You've just opened up a lot of questions, and I'm appreciative of that, to continue the sort of soul searching, if you will. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you so much for sharing, and totally appreciate your honesty. And I understand where you're coming from. And again, I do think it's super important to look at the aspect of multiple lives, gaining merit in that way. And also, we have a system of taxation in most modern democracies. And we spend thousands of our dollars every single year giving trillions of dollars to military industrial complex here in this country. And, you know, back in ancient India, who supported those who were seeking a spiritual way of life? It was definitely the people. And I also think how much richer, at least our country would be, if we gave just a tiny fraction of what we give to the military to people who would like to seek a spiritual way of life. How different would our society be? I think it'd be tremendously different, and something I would love to see, but sadly, I don't see happening. Annie, you had your hand up, and I'm just doing my best to call in order, just so y'all know, because I do know we're running out of time. Annie?
Actually, I thought that the Buddha, actually here in Asia, we were taught, actually I recently did a dana with a very little known monk, and he was very inspiring, because actually I'm quite fond of this monk because of the way he taught. He was so gentle, his manner and all that. So I think the first point is that where it gives confidence, you should give. Because Buddha made a distinction between where should a gift be given, and where does a gift that's given yield bigger fruit. So it doesn't mean that you can still give when you are inspired. But what's very inspiring about that particular monk is because he's very humble, and it's his character that inspired me. So I felt very happy when I gave to him, and that already to me is the merit, because I see the merit. Not okay. One is the we accumulate merit for later life, and also here and now we can experience the happiness. And what was doubling make me very happy was the monk actually told us that you are not giving just to me, you are actually giving to the Mahasangha. And that really inspired me, because he also mentioned the monk that came before him, and the monk that he told me that we are giving to the whole line of inspiring people. And that makes me feel, I felt very happy. So to me, there's no real distinction. It depends on how happy you feel as well, because your happiness is also very important. And then the other thing is, I can't remember the other thing. I better give the chance to other people to ask questions.
Thank you so much for sharing, Annie. So, I mean, I really just see so much how our perspective on giving is truly, truly shaped by the societies in which we're raised. And I'm finding this discussion quite fascinating. So now we have Catherine from Kuala Lumpur.
Yes, hello everyone. Okay, on top of what Annie said, I noticed over here, when people give, that means the giver, they actually still have a lot of loba or greed in the mind, because they want to have more in returns. So I think because of this loba, we are still swimming in this samsara. Everybody wants to give to the state, right? That's it, my sharing.
And thank you so
Yes,
much.
I think it's important to make sure that we always investigate our minds and our motivations for giving. Why are we giving? Are we giving because we want a very kind of, materialistic reward? We think, oh, if I give to this person, things are going to work out really well for me? Or is it really more of an altruistic kind of giving?
Thank you. And we've got just a few seconds left for Ken. Ken?
Catholicism has been mentioned a couple of times here, and I just wanted to say, as a product of 16 years of Catholic schooling, when I was dealing with Sri Lankan monks and they were talking about merit, the first thing I thought of was indulgences. And as you may remember from the history of the Protestant Revolution, the church was selling indulgences. And I think that's part of Stephanie's reaction to this aspect of the Dhamma. The other thing is, within the Dhamma, there is the concept of the Sangha as being a field of merit, and that we are through dana we are planting seeds in the field of merit. I think the Magga Sutta and the Sutta Nipata talks about that. Anyway.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I do think planting seeds, I love that metaphor. And I think it's a great one for giving. We've all hopefully planted a few seeds here and there in people's lives, and we may or may not know how we've affected their lives. We may have maybe just a brief comment we've given to a stranger on a train or a bus has changed their perspective completely. So I think one of the greatest lessons is to give freely, to give with confidence, and just strive for the altruism that seems so difficult for us humans to have and maintain.
When in doubt, give more.
That's it. I love it. It's great. And wisely. And so just briefly, because we've run out of time, and I so apologize that we're over time, especially some of y'all who have to get off and get to work this morning. But just a reminder, we have finished with this unit. And
please read the postscript.
Read it. You're going to love it. Yes, you're going to love it. We're going to be doing some updates on the website and for our new unit. And also I'm going back to Texas. So there's that. So we're taking the next 2 sessions off, and we will be back. I'm looking at the calendar. Stephen will be teaching again next Thursday. Yes, the 19th.
Right.
Is that correct?
I think that's correct. The 19th.
Okay,
Thursday
everyone.
the 19th, or so the 20th for some.
That's right. Thank you for adding that. So please add that to your calendars. We want to see you all then. And meanwhile, we hope that you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. And we've loved studying the Kosala Samyutta and learning all about King Pasenadi with you.
And so, I still like you, although you're a Patujana.
All right.
All Patujanas.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone, don't feel bad.
Don't feel bad. It's cool.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Nighty night.